UFC 306, what did you guys think? By the way, I don't have time to edit or do any of this type of stuff anymore. I'm in the middle of transitioning my business to something else. And this is just a hobby of mine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to yap at my phone and I'm going to post it. And interestingly enough, the best video I've ever done that got the most amount of views is basically just me talking at my phone exactly like this instead of doing all this editing and fancy stuff. So I'm going to do that from now on. So like, subscribe, watch, do all that stuff because it helps me grow the channel, etc., etc. UFC 306. I thought that the fights exceeded expectations, right? I was going into that card being like, this is going to be a terrible card, like super underwhelming. You know, the fighters on this card are not particularly exciting. There's no other than the main co-main and the Ortega versus Lopez. Other than that, there's nobody on there to get me excited, right? But I was wrong. Everybody delivered as far as excitement goes, and as far as good war. I think the first fight, the first fight of the pay-per-view card was incredible, potentially fight of the year, like absolute. No, that was the second. The second one, absolutely wild card, wild fight. Fight of the year contender for sure. But and it looked like if you had been at UFC Noche, the visual effects and kind of what they were trying to do inside the stadium was absolutely incredible. It did look pretty cool, seeing like Bruce Buffer and the fights and everything like that projected out to what I think they call it the exosphere. So that looks really interesting. But let's talk main and co-main event. Merab won the belt. Congratulations to him, but that was a snooze fest of a performance, right? And we expected that. Like, all he was going to do, and this is what I said. I said, if Merab can get the tape, he's basically going to take down O'Malley, hold him down, and, beat him up a little bit, right? And that's his path to victory. And O'Malley's path, he could win on the feet by decision or win via KO TKO, right? And the former happened, not the latter. But this kind of brings a little bit of a question, right? Is at what point, and I'm saying this like, I am a little bit disappointed that O'Malley lost, right? Like, I like a guy who, says they're going to win and just keeps doing it. But obviously, Merab's style was terrible for him. But, one of the things, so I watched quite a bit of Karate Combat, and one of the things I love about their rule set is that basically if you take somebody down and you're not doing anything with that takedown, like, they immediately stand you back up and you have to keep fighting, right? Which, like, yeah, I realize that's not real fighting and it's, it is what it is. But in terms of a sport perspective, like, unless you're doing some serious ground and pound and advancing the position and you've only got a few seconds to do it, right? They're going to stand you back up and make you keep fighting. Whereas here, it's like, unless you're really, like, you could do just enough to kind of stall, but still maintain the position, right? And I'm not saying that Merab was doing that, but there were moments, right, where, like, he was kind of lying there, putting pressure on him and just throwing, like, 1-2 punch, and that went on for 30 seconds. It was, like, a little bit of ground and pound, but nothing devastating, right? And that was enough to kind of keep Herb Dean from telling them to work, from telling them to do anything, to switch the position, all that kind of stuff. So it's just, and it was the same team with it was a little bit different with Valentina, I think, in the sense that, like, she was constantly advancing the position, doing some ground and pound. She was attempting to do what do you call it, an arm triangle, right? And Grasso was constantly kind of fishing for submissions. I don't know, man. I just felt like both of those were relatively boring as far as title fights go. And the reason is because of the fact that, like, you really can take an opponent down and just kind of lie on top of them, right? And obviously you have to do something, right? But, like, it's relatively minimal in order for you to be able to maintain that position and kind of ride things out, right? Like we've seen that countless times, right? Like the Almeida versus Derek Lewis kind of thing, you know. It was a similar situation to that, and we saw it a little bit with Bilal, but versus Leon at UFC 304. But even still, right? Like, he was doing some serious wrestling, some serious takedowns. He was going to the back. He was fishing for submissions, like constant kind of ground and pound, I would say, really trying to beat up on Leon. And if you compare that to Merab's performance, I don't know. It's just what I was watching. Like, there were moments, right, where he was definitely going after it and trying to beat up O'Malley, but it was usually kind of in a scramble or an exchange to for O'Malley to get back to his feet, right? But when he had him on his back, it seemed to me like he wasn't doing much with that position, right? As far as, and which is why a couple of the judges scored a couple of rounds in favor of O'Malley. Because if I look at that, right, you could make an argument that Merab won all 5 rounds, right? Like, control time, striking was relatively even, but at the end of the day, like, there were a couple of rounds where O'Malley's strikes did hurt Merab, did cut him, did some damage, right? But for all Merab's sake on the ground, like, he didn't do much, right? He just kind of held him down. So I don't know, right? Like, I'm not, I'm not for changing the rules, because that's the one thing I like about the UFC is it's probably the closest thing to real combat that you're gonna see, right? And I love this. For the most part, I love the submission and grappling components to MMA, right? Like, some of those fights with crazy good grappling exchanges, like Dariush versus Gamrot or Sarukian versus Gamrot, like, those are really exciting, right? Lots of Oliveira in there with a lot of his submission attempts. Like, I love stuff like that, and Ortega going for triangles and all these things. But I feel like that's got to be in the conversation, right? Like, is he going for a submission? Is he advancing the position? How long should you give them to kind of lie on top of their opponent and just do these sort of minimal, like, dum, 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 like 1-2 kind of on the, I don't even know how you describe 1-2 on the ground and then that's it, right? Because that definitely takes away from the entertainment value, right? Like, I like it when they're working, they're trying to advance the position, they're going for submissions. And if you look back to what Khabib was doing, it was totally different, right? Because he would hold people down, but he beat them up while keeping them kind of stuck on the ground, right? And he completely ragdolled them, right? But this was different. Anyway, so I don't know. Maybe I'm just sour because O'Malley lost. That could be why I'm saying this, and I usually don't have a problem with grappling, but I definitely do think, like, when Bilal beat Leon, it was a bit different, right? When Khabib was champion, it was a bit different, right? Compared to what we saw last night. It just felt like they were doing a lot of damage on the ground, whereas Merab just kind of, like, he was doing some, but, like, O'Malley didn't really even look like he looked exhausted, but he didn't look like he was hurt. You know what I mean? Like, he didn't look like he took a ton of damage. So I don't know. You let me know what you guys think. And then I would say the same thing with the co-main, right? 5-0 Valentina. It was all grappling, right? Props to Alexa for, like, she did try to throw up some submissions, but it wasn't enough, right? So yeah, those are kind of my initial thoughts. Let me know what you guys think. Did you enjoy Noche? Do you think this is something the UFC should do more of? The other thing that I kind of like, pacing, right? So I get what they were trying to do, right? They had sort of this slower pace to show the movie and the culture of the Mexican people and all these other kind of things, right? And so with that, coupling that with the visuals and everything like that, it was incredible. But what I will say is that I certainly like the fact that the pacing is pretty good with the UFC. If you compare that to some of the Riyadh season boxing events, oh my God, it's like the amount of time in between fights is almost longer than the fights themselves, usually. So it's ridiculous. Anyway, that's what I think. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.